Hello, and thank you for downloading this episode of Discussing Documentaries with Rick Wharton and me, Matt Wills. Today we are in Rick's house. This is Rick's wheelhouse. He has picked, I've got to say, a hell of a documentary, Rick. A hell of a documentary. So he's picked Malice at the Palace, and it's from the Untold. Is it called the Untold session?
Yeah, Untold series. So
the
there's
Untold
a whole
series,
bunch. There's
right.
going to be one of a female boxer who I think from the advert looks like she's a victim of domestic abuse. The Caitlyn Jenner story.
Oh, okay. All right.
But this one came into my world for an obvious reason.
Yes. So it's from the year 2021. It's called Malice at the Palace. The provider is Netflix. The director was Floyd Russ. It's only just came out, so there's no money listed and there's no accolades listed. And here's the blurb. A brawl broke out near the end of a game between the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons on November 19th, 2004. Nearly 17 years later, we re-examine that night and all the consequences that came from it. And the game they're talking about is, of course, because it's Rick, it is basketball. And while this is in Rick's wheelhouse, just because of my size, I've normally been excluded from games like basketball. It's not really my thing, but I do love a sports documentary. I absolutely love it, just because they are so passionate. You get a professional, and as much as they get paid a lot of money, none of them. It's rarely about the money. For them, they're so passionate about what they're doing, and I love all of that nonsense. So, Rick, as always, man, lead us in.
Yeah, I was always, I think I've mentioned on previous episodes, big fan of it as a kid. And since no one from where I'm from played basketball, I looked really good. and then learned a very big lesson when I went and joined other teams elsewhere. But the funny thing was, I was walking home from my mother's the other day, and a guy came and caught up to us that I haven't spoken to since I was 13. It went to the same comprehensive school, but in different kind of sets and different lives. And he's not a guy you'd fuck with. But he turned around and goes, "Did you keep up with the basketball like?" And I just looked at myself for a second and went, "No, I didn't make it to the NBA." I've come back to help out the Eagles, yeah. But I think he was.
I like the way he thought, because that kid had promise. That Wharton kid, he had real promise.
Hey, it was very nice to chat to him, but he had that kind of up energy of imagine if it worked out, and I'm kind of a blunt pessimist these days, as opposed to yeah, I don't think it was going to work out, pal.
But I like the idea that he probably saw his mum at the weekend, and he was like, "Hey, I saw that Richard Wharton."
Do you know what? I'm not going to doubt that.
Did he keep up with the basketball? Did he make it to America? No, he didn't, Mum. No, he didn't. Lives in Chesterley Street again now. Oh, is he back? Is he? He's back down to earth. Yes, he's back down to earth.
I'd love it if people were if people are under the impression I left Chester Street to go to the NBA. I would stay in my house even more than I already do, just to perpetuate that rumor.
As you're walking down the street, you can hear kids whisper, "That's the guy from the NBA."
And there, me same Hakeem Olajuwon vest and shorts, just walking around for headband on, going, "Do you reckon I recognise us? Do you reckon I see us?" It was really funny because I think he'd had a few, and he's like, he gives you a number, and we'll meet up in that and go for a drink. And I went, I gotta be honest, I don't drink anymore. And it took him back for a second. He went, "Oh, well, we don't have to go for a drink or out. We can go for a juice or something."
I like the pause before he's going for his Rolodex of what other drinks are there.
No, well, for me it was, what do people in that London do? Probably like juice bars or something. Like, I don't know. It just made me chuckle, and I hope we do catch up. But geez, that just did make me laugh.
I like the idea. He thinks you're doing well in basketball.
Well, no, he just asked. I don't know. I don't think he looked at me and my hand-me-down trainers going, I think he made it that one.
Now, while I may not be into basketball, I have only ever seen basketball live, and it was in a place called Madison Square Gardens in New York.
Yeah, the Knicks.
It was, yeah. We went and saw the Knicks. Yeah. The Knicks played basketball. Mate, awesome. Absolutely awesome. Just me and Tao guy, so the guy from my show who doesn't talk to me anymore.
Was that before or after the argument?
It was probably after. Yeah. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, basically I wrote a story about a guy who left a towel on a floor, and
that's the reason. It's the story. That's the reason.
It's unacceptable. And I mentioned it on day one of our holiday in New York, and we had a great holiday. But when we came, he hasn't spoke to me since we came back. So, yeah. And listen, I'm not the easiest person to live with or work with. I get that. I completely understand that. I've shouted at many people I love, including Rick, including my missus, including the majority of our Patreon fans who are my close dear friends. So, yeah, I get it. I'm not easy.
Matt acted like Matt.
Yeah. But me and him at this basketball game, we had a great time. So they do this. Madison Square Gardens is... Have you ever been? Before I get into a quick...
Well, it's one of the things when I went to New York, I loved that that's where the train pulled you out of, because it's the famous arena. Everything kind of goes through there. But I've not actually been to MSG, no.
Superb venue. It was like an O2 that worked, but smaller. It was just brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's like the heart of New York.
Yeah, and we were in the top tier, but it didn't feel like it. It was almost like we had a director's box, which I don't understand how we did that, because I only paid like $50 odd for the tickets. But they had a gun that shot T-shirts at you. It was just
I thought you would
such
enjoy
an experience.
Show of it.
The show was...
They do not stop for a second. I went to see an NBA game when we went to Philly, and it was the 76ers before they had their rebuild that went well. If anyone likes the basketballs, they just signed Andrew Bynum with his daft hair. And I don't think he even bounced the ball for them. But 76ers versus the Utah Jazz. And I'm there with our lasses work colleagues. And that's when I learned about American drink driving. That was something else.
Because they do it?
I seen them sinking a lot of shots, and I don't mean into a hoop, but then just jumping in the car and being fine to drive home. Because everything's so far away, do you know what I mean? And they're just like, I'll be fine. But
designated driver, that's why.
Yeah, that. Anyway. But I'm there, and it's God bless it. It was like our lasses work colleagues and stuff, and they're all super, like, they're American nice, like what we spoke about, and like American nice you can't beat. But I'm next to a guy, like someone's husband, who, like, so she didn't work with her husband, and he's busy telling me how he's pissed off about his AOL stock not fucking paying out or something like that, and how he lost his stock options or something. And I'm like, I work at a bingo hall, man. This is not a chat I need to be in. But the Philly fans were awesome. Like, there's a guy, KJ turns around and asked me, is it okay to boo? And this big fella who looked like Patrice O'Neal turned around and goes, man, this is Philly. We boo Santa.
I'd like to go to Philly just because of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. City. Yeah.
Don't go to the Rocky Steps. Man, you get mobbed. You get absolutely mobbed.
What, because you're British?
People coming... No, because the tourist area, so you got everyone that makes money taking pictures of people and stuff like that. And we got fucking done. Then you got it is the difference between the NBA and the British Basketball League is the difference between our homeless and their homeless in terms of how they pitch to get money. It is
right. Yeah.
It's almost like they don't have a safety net of an NHS.
Right.
Builds champions. But, so, back to the Pacers. So
now, I'd never heard of any of this, right? So I walked into this completely blind, and you just mentioned it last week, and I went, yeah, cool, let's do it then. That sounds awesome. Let's do it. And I got I got the goosebumps.
This sounds like we can't say anything that would get a lot of negative press like last week's episode, so this feels like an easy territory.
Oh, God, but I love these blokes. These blokes were superb. Just as in the basketball players. Talk us through what happened, first of all, because we're going off at all cock. So they say a brawl broke out. Did you remember this happening?
I stopped watching just before LeBron came into the league, so around about 2002 was the last I would kind of make the effort to follow the NBA.
Right, okay.
And that's where I dropped off. So I didn't realize that the Pacers were ever this good. They had a chance when Jordan was kicking around. If you watch the Last Dance documentary, and Reggie Miller and Jordan had a bit of a back and forth during, I think, a conference final. They almost got there, but I didn't realize they'd built around this. So the first guy we kind of meet is Jermaine O'Neal. Yeah. And they go back through his backstory, and he was drafted from high school. Now, usually the high school ones are phenoms and become the best because they don't go to college and have those extra years. That means kind of their bodies are physically ready, and the NBA teams just want them. Like, other people who jumped from high school are the likes of LeBron James, who's won everything, Kobe Bryant, who's one of the greatest of all time, Kevin Garnett went to the Timberwolves at the age of 17, 18, and then Jermaine O'Neal is one of these high school drafts.
But this is the bit I don't get. I don't get the draft. Talk me through the draft.
The draft is why it's an interesting system, which is also a little bit corrupt, and I'll tell you why. So basically, you go for your high school, and then if you're mint, if you're insanely good, you then go to the best high school in the area for basketball. We'll watch, what's it called? Hoop Dreams. Right. Goes through a bit of that.
Okay.
That's one for the future. I think that's a Patreon pick from our fan, Nick.
I can already feel Ozzy Sarah shuddering at that.
So, yeah, we've got fans who like different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you will go to high school, and traditionally that's when you get scholarships to college. Yes. So the colleges want the best basketball team. So if you imagine the American sports, this is the way I kind of see it, is the college system is like our Premier League.
Right.
And then you're getting drafted to the national teams, which every state has a basketball team. If you think Texas is the size, 3 times the size of the UK, and that, so you'll go to college. It's illegal for you to make money out of basketball until you get to the NBA. So that's where it kind of comes into a lot of issues of these people from broke, like people from low income areas, or just, you're 22 and you're trying your best to achieve your dream, and you're being given a fucking business degree at Michigan to do it. Whereas if you break your leg, you're on your arse and you're out the door.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a bit of a fucked up system. There is other routes into the NBA, but that's the traditional one.
And the draft is, so you decide to enter the draft yourself, or did the school put you forward then?
You declare yourself for the draft, so agents start to come round. Right. A bit like the movie He Got Game. So agents will come round, they'll get feel out, you'll go for what's called the draft combine, which you've measured, and they measure your wingspan and how high you can jump, how quick you can run, and they put you in games, you do all the drills, and then that's the stats that the teams go on. So I don't know if it's the same now. I think the bottom 5 teams go into a lottery to see who gets first pick.
Okay, and then you as a team then get to choose who you believe is the best player, because your scouts have scouted it all out.
Yes. So if you watch,
or you just choose the best player, even if they're not going to match your team, you can then sell them on.
So if you watched The Last Dance with Jordan, he was kicking off that the Bulls were intentionally benching him because it had a bad season and they were being in line for a top draft pick.
Right.
So he then kicks off and plays amazing, gets them to the playoffs, and they lose that draft pick. Also, Jordan was drafted 3rd. So Hakeem Olajuwon, one of the best centers of all time, 7-footer. He got drafted first to the Houston Rockets. The Chicago Bulls would have still drafted him. Would have drafted Hakeem over Jordan, because back then it was a big man game, which I'll bring that back in a second. So he went first. Then the Portland Trail Blazers had the 2nd pick. They already had a player called Clyde Drexler, who is a Hall of Famer, But he's a shooting guard, as is MJ. So they got this guy who I couldn't even tell you what his name is now. I'll try to remember it from the documentary. It's gone. And then the Bulls. So there's this one person that was was drafted before Michael Jordan. And you just think of the difference in your team. If you just thought, well, maybe Jordan can play small forward. Do you know what I mean? It's a 2-inch difference. And
yeah. But maybe that spurred him on, right? And that's why he had. I mean, he already had the fire in his belly. If you haven't seen The Last Dance, I would highly recommend it. That's one of the best docuseries I've ever watched.
If you haven't seen it, I'd give it a watch, because it will be coming up in one of our Patreon series once I've dragged Matt through Making a Murderer and we've done our Patreon pick. But
I love The Last Dance, man. Anyway, so back to this. So Jermaine O'Neal is picked from the.
He's drafted 17th.
Yeah, and he's considered quite the catch, right? But then he gets benched straight away.
Well, he was booed from being chosen, and that stuck in his craw. I don't understand who can boo a kid achieving their dreams. Like, so
I thought he was cheered. I saw them cheering.
No. I've watched it twice. He got booed going up, and that was a problem for him. They wanted someone else, because also, if you think there might have been like a college like standout from that area, so they've all watched him at the colleges they like, and they're like, there was a big one with New York and Porzingis. So Porzingis is a 7-footer who's kind of changed the game because he can shoot 3-pointers, and people that tall couldn't at that time. And they wanted, I forget who they wanted, but they went for him, and he got booed and had to really prove himself.
It's weird you say that about the shooting, because there's a great Malcolm Gladwell book where he talks about you will have a much higher success rate if you throw underarm for those 3-point shots.
Free throws,
there you go. If you throw them underarm, which you are allowed to do, rather than the classic overarm.
I've got to be honest, right? If you've never
significantly higher, you'll have a much higher success rate. But people don't do it. And do you know why? It don't look cool.
No, I disagree.
Simple as that. No, he's got stats on it. You can't disagree with Malcolm Gladwell.
I'll tell you what his stats are.
That's like saying God's wrong.
His stats are, if you've never played basketball before and you're trying to copy what the NBA player does, compared to a guy who's been drilled for his entire fucking life since leaving the womb to shoot like that,
I'll find it.
Let him keep his shooting form.
Now, I'll find it for you, because one of the most successful shooters of all time was an underarm shot guy in the NBA. Honest, it's Malcolm Gladwell. You can't, like I said, he knows more than God. I'm telling you. Anywho.
I think people don't check his stats. That sounds like a white guy. Hey, they're just doing underarm. They're just doing it because they're cool.
So Jermaine gets picked and ends up going to the Indiana Pacers. And there's a guy on that team who I just absolutely fell in love with. Can you guess who I fell in love with in this documentary?
Reggie Miller.
Loved him.
See, the thing I loved about this documentary, which I loved him in The Last Dance as well. He's a big talking head in The Last Dance. Now, there is a big juxtaposition within this documentary. Now, Reggie is one of the guys who's went into broadcasting since retiring. He's courtside, he does interviews, he does the play-by-play. He has a very different tone and intellect compared to the other guys that are big parts of this. There is such a difference.
He looks like a professor at Princeton, right? He's there in his check shirt and his bow tie. And he's like, well, if you're a basketball nut like me, then you know that Jermaine O'Neal was our guy.
I think his older sisters were WNBA players, if I remember the Reggie story correctly.
Right.
I had him on a VHS called Hardwood Heroes back when I was living the dream.
Bloody hell.
And yeah, so his sisters were like dominant in college, and they were the ones kicking his ass on like the garage hoop until he got better and tougher. But again, there's a big difference because Reggie's learned how to talk to the camera because he was one of the best trash talkers of all time. He would be talking shit on the court all day long. And like you say, he sounds like a Harvard professor when he's talking now. Now he's got the broadcast hat on. But like, yeah,
But he's got a twinkle in his eyes. Oh, I loved him. Absolutely loved him.
Reggie's one of the best players of all time, and their owner decides to pull the trigger to try and build a championship-winning team before he retires.
Yes, yeah.
So they get Jermaine O'Neal, Ron Artest, and then you hear the Ron Artest story when he's at the Bulls and he's on his way to the game on a coach, and he says, "Don't get off the coach, you've been traded." He gets off the coach, so when "Don't get off the court and train," and he goes on the court. So this guy's just
I'm going on this motherfucking court.
Yeah, there is no.
And the other guy they're building the team around is Steven Jackson, who was the new joiner. But that Ron Artest...
You hear a lot about Artest first, and you hear about how he's a psycho, and he flips out, and he does all this stuff, and then you go, we straight Steven Jackson, and Ron Artest go, yeah, that guy's crazy.
But Ron Artest, for those of you who are into music, you might also know him as Meta World Peace. Because that's his...
You know what? Since I was playing the computer games, but not watching... I used to think it was some fake player that I had to trade off the Lakers. I hated seeing the name Meta World Peace on there. I didn't realize this was this guy's like journey through like mental health. Didn't realize it was Ron Artest.
Yeah, one of the best players of all time, according to this documentary. It was the way I understood it.
Defensive, one of the best defensive players of all time.
So they're going to build the team with Reggie Miller as basically the old dog, trying to teach these young pups new tricks, right? And trying to get them to say, we can be a championship team here. We can win some trophies. And as a fan, now sports fans are, in my opinion, because I am one, we are idiotic, right, when it comes to our passions. And this all comes out in this documentary. But that's all we want. We want some trophies. Look at how nuts you go over the Newcastle trade-off, right? And I know you, right? You are one of the loveliest human beings I've ever met. But you're like, if I have to kill 900 journalists, then
it goes up one every day. The deal isn't deal isn't approved
because you get crazy chasing for that little bit of silver.
Because you want it to be fun. Do you know what I mean? You at least want to be in the shout. Look at the NBA. The NBA season is 89 games, right? Imagine, and you normally would have to buy a season ticket. It's like the British Premier League.
Yeah.
You'd have to put your name on a fucking list to get a season ticket 3 years in advance. You imagine you've had your name on that list, all right, so we sold Reggie Miller, got rid of Jermaine and Artest. That's still going to be $2,000, and you're going to have to turn up, 48 times to watch us get tonked?
Yeah.
Then at the end of 82-game season, you go into the playoffs, which is the best of 7 series, until it really has, stakes.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's absolutely brutal. So you get why the fans get so passionate.
And I think what they do is they build just a dominant defensive team around Reggie. I mean, you see Jermaine O'Neal just having some amazing highlights, but Ron Artest is a defensive machine. Steven Jackson,
they are the best at what they do, right? And Reggie Miller said this. Now you're going to have to translate this for me. That season, we loaded for bear. What does that mean?
Right, they loaded the team, so you kind of have a choice whether or not you're doing a rebuild and you're getting draft picks. Right. So you trades. You don't buy players. This is what they were hoping from the European Super League, basically, so they can start to put a cap on wages.
So they can stop the agents upping everything.
So you get free agents. So that's people whose contractors ran down.
Yeah.
Or you have to trade for them. Now, you would never really want to trade for a player as good as a player. There's no improvement to your team unless you have 2 amazing players in one position. So what tends to happen, it goes, right, we'll give you these 2 players plus our draft pick from this year and that year.
For this person.
For this one person. Like when Jordan came out of retirement and went to the Wizards, they blew up a potential championship winning team in the future by trading off all their young players and their draft picks to put a good team around Jordan.
Because they thought they might get something. Did Jordan win anything for Wizards? Oh, he did.
No, it didn't.
He didn't pan
work out as well from that. Yeah. But he had games where he scored like 48 points and he was Michael Jordan again, which I think was...
Now, just to move this along, because I think anyone who's listening to this might just wants us to get to the fight. So in 2004, the Indiana Pacers made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. and they lost it due to a flagrant foul by Ron Artest.
Yeah, so it's 59-59, and Artest just elbows a guy in the post for basically no reason. It shows you that he's crazy. That is just above and beyond elbowing someone in the face. I mean, crazy on the court, not crazy mental health.
Although he did have, as he said, he had mental health issues. His psychiatrist followed him everywhere.
And then the Pistons, and it was 59-59. They lost out to that, and then kind of the Pistons went on to win the championship. So that was the year they could have won.
I like Reggie Miller in that, though. But when Reggie Miller was like, "You guys, we could have won this." It was just proper tickled me.
Just playing on emotion,
of course,
with a point to prove.
Yeah, whereas he's been around for a while, right? And he's like, "This is our chance." And do you know what they're playing for as players? They just want to get that ring. If you win the championship, you get a championship ring.
There's also the bump up in pay, I think. Your stock goes up. And then when you come out, because when you come out of contracts, you then name your price if you're good enough.
Right, okay.
Like there's a Kawhi Leonard got traded from San Antonio, went to Toronto and won them a championship in Toronto, which never happened. And then was like, yeah, because if you trade a player, you trade their current contract. You don't move up.
Yeah, okay.
So it's just so you got 1 year left. Toronto took that up, bang, they had him for a year, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm peace out, by the way. And then demanded that like the LA Clippers give him like private jets himself to matches and stuff like that. Some insane deal where you just had to bow down to have this amazing player. You're gonna have to do that. So that it's about your stock and how much money you can as well.
I don't blame them for doing that, right? Because the life of sportsmen, they're like dragonflies or mayflies, rather.
Yeah.
It's incredibly short, right? So they're probably going to live till they're 60 or 70. Yeah. And they've probably got 10 years of making money, and then it all drops off. So, fair play to them for trying to, eke a little bit out. And the brilliant thing that Jermaine O'Neal says, who is hands down such a passionate, he just comes across as passionate, intelligent, softly spoken, very well thought out, what he's going to say.
It's the angle of the camera in him. You don't realise he's 6'11".
No, right? Yeah, exactly. 6'11", he's like, bloody hell.
Yeah, he's a centre.
But what he says is, listen, I was my opportunity for my family to break out of our social class. I was it. I was a chance to give everyone in my family a leg up, basically, and to stop what's been happening for hundreds of years to him and his ancestors, where they were just basically they were working class. And he's like, look, we can fix this. This was my opportunity to help my family. I could not blow it. And then they went to Detroit.
Well, first off, they have the start of the next season, and you got Ron Artest that's basically saying, like, yeah, I'm having time off to do my album. Stuff like that. Which I love seeing that stuff.
I'm an artist, darling. I'm out of here. And
then he tells the fucking team that,
he was at a funeral.
There's been a death in the family, and he's going down to the Teen Choice Awards or something to give out a thing.
He's on telly handing out awards.
But when you hear him talk, it is so like viscerally honest about himself, and you can tell how erratic he is just by him calmly talking. Yeah. Like, this is a guy who, like, there is a high level of anxiety in what he's thinking. He doesn't trust people. He doesn't do this or do that. Like,
but he said he really liked Jermaine and Stephen on the court. Right? He buys into the team. And Jermaine and Stephen are like, well, if that's the case, fucker, turn up for practice like the rest of us.
Yeah. There was a great moment, like, if you watch it, and Stephen Jackson to me looks like one of the most hardest people I've ever seen in my life. He just looks like he has a look of a man who is just ready at any slight thing to put you back in your place. And it was so funny because you look at the way Ron Artest is set. He's like almost sliding down his sofa like a kid who's been told off. You know what I mean? He's like, yeah, I'm going to talk about this. He's like, and then you see Reggie Miller. He's there like a commentator who's going over
really
what
calm.
happened analytically. And then you see Stephen Jackson, who's not even facing the fucking camera and going, this is the last time I'm going to talk about this shit. You got that? Like He is just like I've got my back turned to the boom mic guy because if he tries something, I'll still kill him. Like I just want to know.
What I liked about Ron, I said, you're right. The way he slouched down and he got lower and lower and lower, but the way he spoke with such honesty about his mental health was incredible.
Yep.
It was like, yeah, man, fucking, I really suffered from anxiety. I think those around me knew it. You reckon, Ron? Is that what you reckon? And then they go to Detroit, and here's a great. I think this was Reggie Miller who said this. Reggie Miller
so this
said
is the rematch.
Yes, of where they
from last year. They beat them in the conference finals before going to the final the year before. This is the time they're going to make a statement against them.
And what they're saying is the winner of this game will probably go on to win the championship. So it really, because that's how good both teams were, and they were almost cancelling one another out. But here's what they said about. They said the Detroit fans, the Detroit followers have a rabid fan base. Rabid.
Well, they have their own mystique in Detroit because they come from the bad boy Pistons era as well, whereas like rules of the game have been changed because of Detroit. So like if you watch the game The Last Dance, the Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, they had a philosophy where like the whistle goes foul, right? Anything that happens after that whistle doesn't count. So what they would do, if you're going through the key to the basket, someone would foul you, tap you on your arm, whistle goes, you put your shot off, and then the other guy comes and elbows you in the face. They were just like, you had to take your career
and that's
into
not a
your
yellow
own
card.
hands. That's you get like 2 flagrant fouls. I don't know kind of the whole thing, but you get 5 fouls in basketball, and on your 6th foul, you're fouled out. And then if it's kind of like you've just punched someone in the face, you get a flagrant 1 or a flagrant 2 and then kicked out.
Right, okay.
But so like these niggly ones, and they'll do stuff like they would, if you jumped up, they would get underneath you, so they land on your ankle and roll their ankles and stuff like that. Like all kinds of every dirty little trick in the book, the Bad Boy Pistons.
Jesus.
And that's like the Isaiah Thomas rivalry of Jordan. They were fucking brutal. And then this team they put together in the early 2000s were like a strong defensive team. I don't know, I wouldn't put them up there with the Bad Boy Pistons for fouls because I didn't watch them enough. But there is an interesting point I'll have to circle back to at the end about what the league's done regarding those kinds of teams.
Right, okay. But the that rabid fan base, do you think that's anything to do with the Flint water?
The water's made them less intelligent. That is a fantastic fucking link back to a Michael Moore documentary. Yeah. That could be down to it. Because they start talking to the fan, and one of the fans has got the daft wig on while he's being interviewed. Yeah, Buddy Franz. And then you talk to the cops, and they're talking about, this guy over here, I don't think it was Buddy Franz, but a different one. We were going to take his tickets off him because it's becoming a problem.
But we thought we'd let him get a lot of beer inside him first and then take the ticket off him. Take the ticket off him at the beginning of the night, not at the end of the night. What, did you need his beer money that badly? How much was he spending on beer? As a business, you're listen, let's let him drink and then we'll take it. Man, once he's had 20 beers, fuck it.
You've got a season ticket for West Ham, or you have had in the past, right?
Yeah.
How does a security guard get to know your name?
Yeah, exactly.
How much of an asshole do you need to be?
Oh, fuck yeah. When I did the tour of the Upton Park before it closed down, they have a jail cell down there, and it is tiny. And I was like, that ain't big enough. And he went, it's never big enough for this fan base. No, it's not. And I spoke to the bloke I sat next to, right? So I sat next to a geezer called Scary Steve. And then the bloke 6 up from me was called Really Scary Steve. So they were both really intimidating blokes. And I said to Scary Steve, I said, I went to that, I did the tour. And I saw that jail cell. He went, yeah, I've been in there a few times. I was like, okay. Yeah,
I went to
I'm sitting with the right people then.
QPR match a few years back, and there's like a stairwell, and literally like 400 people went and sat on that stairwell and had a cigarette, and there was like one spotty steward going, guys, can you stop smoking? And you can tell where fucking mob mentality comes from because they dreamed of having people come and try and remove them because that's what they wanted. They didn't. I mean, they were losing 3-0 to Newcastle. They weren't in a good mood. I was just trying not to fucking speak because I'm with the QPR fans. I was sitting with them and I wanted to go for a cigarette. I mean, it's like, hey, Rick, do you want a cigarette? I'm like, yes, I do, sir.
One would. Let's lose the accent. What I loved about that Buddy Franz is they cut to him on the court and he's shouting, "We're number one, we're number one." And then it cuts to him as a talking head. He's still wearing the wig and the glasses.
Yeah.
This is my character. I am a character act. Well, no one will know me if I take off the wig and the glasses. Or even worse, they will know me without the wig and the glasses, and I don't want that.
There's always one fan. There's one at the QPR that always brings his fucking maracas and wears a sombrero and has to sit near the away fans. And I can't tell you how far removed I want to be from those people.
Yes, no, I'm with you.
Imagine getting your season ticket. You got that prick getting up and his maracas every 5 times. Every time there's a corner, you'd be like, I'm not going. Forget the money.
We had at Upton Park, we had what most of us would. I think we had the same announcer for about 2 decades. He was funny. He was quick-witted. One night he was like, and they've substituted the white ball for an orange ball. He was just a really funny bloke. He's even written a book about it. And then something happened and he went, "I'm not putting up with this shit." And he walked. And I thought he was the best announcer I'd ever heard because he was always raving about my team. And then I hear the announcer in Detroit at this game.
Oh, that's what I mean about the show. The pageantry to it is a different level.
And for Detroit.
It's fucking awesome. It's just a different level of energy. Like, we have a song that plays as we walk out onto the field, and then someone calmly reads out who's starting for us. When you go, at 6-6, it's just amazing.
It is such a show. It really does.
A whole package show at these games. You hear from Big Ben Wallace. He was the center for Detroit, and he's the guy that sounded as if he was in witness protection and had a voice modulator. His voice was that deep. You're just like, this guy is terrifying. I can't even do an impression. It sounds like it comes from his ass. His speech goes, and then this happened. I can't even do it justice.
And these blokes are big,
Nate
right?
Dogg, if you've ever liked rap. Nate Dogg is who he sounds like.
Right.
Like, hold up.
And then basically, then the game happens, and the reason it's called Malice at the Palace is because where they're playing is it called the Auburn Palace?
The Auburn Palace was the Detroit arena, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So then the game starts, and to say it's a bit tense is an understatement. And then it kicks off like a Cockney funeral, doesn't it?
This is how it happens. So basically, Indiana whopped them. They are like 25 points ahead.
Yeah.
There was a clip, right? And it shows you Ron Artest's kind of mentality going into this match where he's on a fast break. So a fast break, Matt, is where, imagine one team's attack. It's a counter-attack. Right. So one team's attacking, your team steals the ball and sprints to the other end quickly to try and get a quick point. That's a fast break. Right. So you see Ron Artest dribbling the ball, but between each bounce, you can tell he's looking back to who to punch as he's going towards the hoop. It's just a lovely... There is no reason for him to be slowing down and looking this way, but you can tell he's like, boom, boom, boom. All right, I guess I'll put it in the hoop.
Someone's going to get it.
So they're that far ahead. And then Reggie Miller's one of the people who like kind of pointed out this. He says, right, the fans leave when you're getting tonked. It's in the fourth quarter. You're down by 20. You're not come back. The regular fans leave to beat traffic.
And the regular fans are in the good seats, right?
In the good seats. And then the psychopath fans just trickle down to be closer to the court.
Yes.
So now they're almost courtside, the ones that have been stuck up in the gods because they're not allowed that close to the players.
And Reggie Miller's not playing, right? Because he's got a broken hand.
Reggie's injured, broken finger, yeah. So what happens is they're winning, and Tinsley, I think the player was called, turns around to Ron Artest and went, "You can get your foul now." So like I say, you got 5 fouls. If you want to take it out on these guys, what happened last year, knock yourself out because it doesn't matter. So the next time the ball's up the other end of the court, Ben Wallace is in the post, going for an open layup, and Ron Artest goes, "I couldn't be bothered to try and block him, so I just pushed him in the back of the head." Or he just whacks him. And again, this is not regular because this is a 6'7" guy whacking you. This is an in shape 6'7" aggressive guy whacking you, not like, Ivan Gattuso's clip the back of your heels while you're through on goal. That hurts when someone does that.
I thought that incident happened, and that's why they lost the initial game the year before.
No, the year before was the elbow on a player. When it was
Right,
59-59
right.
in the conference, he elbowed a guy, and then they were like, that's a flagrant, and then they didn't have one of their top defensive
Right,
players.
okay, okay, yeah.
So then he whacks Ben Wallace. It all kind of kicks off. And then as they go in, there's pushing and shoving. Artest goes and lies down on the scorer's bench table. And then puts his hand
but lies down as if he's
up.
posing for a Picasso, right?
Yeah, he's showing that he's not
like
bothered.
He's hello,
yeah.
Paint me now.
I know my team. I know Jermaine O'Neal and Stephen Jackson is not going to let them touch me, so I'm fine. And then he also says my therapist who had to travel with the team with this guy. So they're literally every 5. So they're kicking off, and especially the disrespect of him lying on the scores bench, laughing at them after doing that.
Yeah,
they're getting angry. And again, you look at Ben Wallace. That's not a guy who gets shoved a whole lot. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't get treated like that as a 7-foot built like a brick shithouse man.
No.
And then a fan, and then Reggie does it perfectly because he just sees a fan chucks a bottle or a can from like the 9th row and hits Artest.
Great throw.
And he goes mental.
Great throw. Hits him square on the noggin, right? It clocks him. And
it fucking did.
He was like a greyhound, right? It was like the trap went up. He ran up. He literally jumped over people like Superman. And he went up and he punched this fella. Sadly, he punched the wrong fella.
Yeah, you will find that out. But the size difference, like I say, I've been to a few of these games and I've seen these people.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bit like realizing the tiger enclosure isn't at a height they can't jump out of. If you're at the zoo. And you're like,
great
flashing
analogy.
your dick at the tigers, and you're just like, oh fuck, this just you've now got Ron fucking Artest leaping over 3 sets of chairs at a time to get to you. And he kicks off. And then Stephen Jackson jumps into the crowd, and that all kicks off.
And to quote Stephen Jackson...
And the whole thing just mob mentality.
Yeah, well, he said, look, it was 15 of us against 30,000 people.
Yeah.
And they had 3 police officers there to police that game. That's disgraceful. Basically, they break down throughout the documentary how the fight happened and the cause and effect of what happened. But then it cuts to the press and how the press are looking at it. And they're like, these basketball players are thugs, they're blah, blah, blah. And to me, it just seemed like the press got really racist. Did you read that as well?
There is so much of that within the NBA. So I saw a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar one. And now Kareem's 7'2" and got the longest arms of all time, right? He was one of the biggest scorers in NBA history, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. In college, when he went to college, they made it illegal to dunk. And he literally turned around and went, yeah, there's not a lot of white guys dunking too much during a match. Okay, that is There was the Michigan Fab Four, which they started to wear baggy shorts. And they were like, we don't like this thug gangster rap mentality. And the whole Christian right and the fucking right-wing media jumped on that. They don't like the earrings. They don't. And again, it's because it's taken it away from the white America's pastime.
Yeah. It was racial as well. You felt that watching.
100% was racial. Thugs sitting there like gangsters and shit like that. It's fucked up. They just chucking bottles at them. They got
They called them the rap generation.
The rap generation, like Allen Iverson was a big one for that. Took a lot of flack. He started dressing comfortably.
Jermaine said a really good thing though. He said, "Look, while the press are here blaming us about us having this fight," and he goes, "We're not proud of this, right? It's destroyed careers." He said, "But what about ice hockey, where they've been beating the crap out of one another during games for decades, and no one's got a problem with that?" And you think about predominantly the people who play ice hockey versus the people who play basketball. Look at the that's almost racial profiling, isn't it? That they're putting on. Basketball's thuggish, whereas ice hockey, well, it's okay. They've just got a lot of aggression.
Marcus of Queensbury's, yeah. Well, no,
Yeah.
but ice hockey's fucking ferocious as well, to be fair. But the fact that they're not jumped on for it is, ridiculous.
It's disgraceful, and it just seemed racist to me. Looking,
the documentary is worth watching for the footage alone of the fight because
it's never been released before.
Yeah, not to that extent. I think I mean ESPN would have went through it in grave detail at the time, I imagine. But there's stuff like, so Ron Artest comes down to the court, and the fan who they interview, he runs down to the court and then goes up to try and punch him in the fucking face, which again, how much adrenaline is in your fucking body when you're going up to a guy like this going, this is going to work out all right. Like, this is...
And Ron Artest sees that coming, and he just lays him out.
Lays him out, and then another guy comes from him, Jermaine O'Neal. 7 foot, Jermaine O'Neal, 7 foot, quickest fucking 7-footer alive at that point. Sprints across the court, and Reggie says he is so lucky he slipped. That is the best. Yeah. Because that's
the best miss of his career. Yeah. Because he went to punch this guy, slipped, and didn't connect. And he said if he would have connected, that fan would have been dead. And then the punishments were handed down. And again, this was incredibly damaged as well because the punishments were handed down.
When they're led back to the dressing room and they're just throwing the beers on them and chucking shit.
Oh, that's disgraceful. Yeah. But they punished the players and not the fans. Now, and this was arbitrated. Effectively, it goes to a court.
Oh,
right,
can we
where it gets
hang
arbitrated.
back just one
but
second?
It's
the police
it's on a
come
basketball
out,
court. Go on.
Yeah, the police come out during the melee and go to try and mace Ron Artest, not the people throwing stuff. And then they also try to arrest Reggie Miller as a fan on the court. It's like, how do you not know who Reggie Miller is?
Stephen Jackson.
They then try to arrest Jermaine O'Neal in the back. And then Jermaine, I love the idea, because you saw the cops are so subdued. Yeah, the cops, it goes, and then this happened. And they're so chilled out the way they're talking about, like just jaded beat cops, you know? And Jermaine O'Neal says, listen, I'm getting back on this bus. Talk to my fucking lawyers, all right? Because you got to remember, like, you need to start treating these people like they're fucking millionaires again. They're off the court. They have the fucking financial backing to take this shit seriously. It's not like chucking one of these bums in the fucking back of a bus and being like, what are you going to do? What, go through 2 years legal to get your fucking comp pen?
Yeah.
The player who punched Artest punched, he goes up to one of the officers to try and keep him out of the way, and he's with a friend going, wouldn't it be great if one of us hurt ourselves and we could sue? And then you see footage of him being taken out in a neck brace. It was a short clip, and you got him as a talking head, and he was a fucking asshole. He's like saying, it was a punk move from Artest. Yeah.
No, he wasn't a player, he was a fan. Yeah.
Yeah, the fan, Charlie Haddad.
Yeah,
he's called.
What did he say? He'd sucker punch me from behind. No,
then you see the footage, you ran at him, and he bopped you in the face, and you felt like a sack of shit. Like,
yeah. But the punishments were just so wrong. So, and again, the punishments, you're only in the middle of the documentary by this, although we're almost at the end of talking about it. But the punishments were handed down by David Stern. And like I said, they do it through a court, like a basketball court. And David Stern is the head of the NBA. So he shouldn't be the person who makes this decision. He shouldn't be the one reviewing evidence. But he just went, yeah, you're all thugs. Artest got suspended for the rest of the season. Jackson got 30-game suspension. O'Neal got a 25-game suspension. And Ben Wallace also from the Pistons also got banned. And the players were blamed for the entire thing. But there was no one looked at the provocation until the county prosecutor, David Goikaika, turned up. Now, he seemed like a fair and reasonable guy. Because he's like, whoa, we're not blaming anyone. We've got to look at the evidence here. What are you talking about? And then he breaks it down into minute detail, doesn't he? And it's beautiful. That guy
Yeah,
was
it's
just
really good the way they put it together. Again, it seems like a short story about one incident, but it's so well packaged and put together. It's got
it is.
the
Yes.
highlights of the sport. It's got the charismatic people
Yeah.
talking about it, and it's got the whole
compelling to
fallout
watch.
of it. Yeah, it was really, really good.
I thought, you know who needs that David Gorsiker? Stephen Avery. He needed him as a prosecutor in Madison County.
Manitowoc, yeah.
Manitowoc, yeah. Because he said, look, we're going to look at the fans and players, and we're going to hold the correct ones accountable. And what did he say about Ron Artest? Ron had every right to defend himself. He fucking did as well. There was a geezer coming up to punch him. He just defended himself. And he got banned for the rest of the season. And it cost them the championship. And Reggie Miller, man, you could tell that guy was broken-hearted. And he ain't getting over that broken heart. That was his chance.
Because the Pistons won it that year. The Pistons won the whole thing that year.
Yeah.
And they were whopping them. And they had a team that could just roll past everyone. They had the best record, and then it just imploded. They got fucked over. Even David Stern, when he sat there, goes, "Oh, was it unanimous?" Yeah, it was unanimous. A 1-0 vote. He's done for the season.
Yeah. But as David Stern, you're the only guy who's checking it out, mate. Hang on, how is that fair?
Then you have the guy who threw the can being interviewed.
Now,
John
effectively,
Green.
that's what kicked it all off in a much bigger way. So when that bottle hit Ron Artest on the head and he ran up to the stadium, up the stands, yeah, they exploded, right? And he's the guilty one on the grassy knoll. He was it.
And he's been an asshole in interviews.
Oh, he's a fucking
been
prick.
Such an asshole.
Yeah, he's a prick.
And when you see the reporters come to his door, which I hate reporters coming to people's fucking doors, I don't think that's on anywhere. But like when he chases them off with their dog and he's being aggressive with them, and then he's on TV and he's laughing about it, and he's just like, he's laughing at the guy who got punched instead of him.
Well, he said, are you pleased that the other guy got punched? And he went, I'm just glad it wasn't me. I don't care who he was. And he tripped Ron Artest over. As Ron Artest went up to punch the other guy, thinking it was him who threw it, it wasn't. It was that John Green fella. John Green tripped him over, as if to add insult to injury. And he got charged, that John Green, the bottle thrower, with cold clocking. What the fuck is cold clocking?
Cold cocking is what it's called. I think that's hitting someone or something.
Oh, is that what it is?
I've heard it used within reference to when you hit someone with the butt of a gun, you got cold cocked. Or
okay.
when you hit someone who's not expecting to be hit, may be the definition.
Right, okay, all right. Okay. And it was just...
So you go through the whole court process...
Yeah, no, go on.
No, I just said they go through the whole court process, and then you see the fallout. So what happens is the Pacers season falls apart. They don't win, and then Reggie retires, I think, at the end of that season. So that was his chance to go out with the fairy tale ending. Yeah. That was taken away from him. And they all say they feel bad for Reggie, and I think they also feel bad for Jermaine, because Steven Jackson won a championship at San Antonio, and then Ron Artest asks to be traded. So he asks to be traded. He then changes his name to Meta World Peace, probably to help his music career. I'm not sure. He goes through what the meta and the world peace means and stuff like that. But then when LA win a championship, again, he just speaks so real. So he's in an interview. They've just won the final Game 7. He's like, I feel bad. I should have won one. This should have been for Jermaine and Steve and Reggie and Tinsley.
Yeah.
I should have won one of those guys. So he says himself, he feels terrible for how he acted during that.
And he acts with integrity with his words. He really does. He was, and in that moment, which should have been one of the happiest moments of his life, he's basically apologising again to those players who he fucked it up for because he couldn't keep his shit together. And they said the person who suffered the most out of that brawl was probably Jermaine O'Neal's career.
Yeah.
Because that really fucked it up for him, right?
Well, it's all such move and chess pieces where you end up and whether or not, because that was 4 great players on a team. Very rarely is there 4
Yeah.
world beaters on a team. They're like a team of 3 is a super team, and normally due to salary caps, you'd have a team of 2, and then they kind of finagle around that. So like when LeBron went to Miami, he pretty much got paid like lowest rate, and then just lived off his endorsement deals, so he could play with 2 other All-Stars. The Brooklyn Nets have currently done it with 4 world beaters. Just players that haven't won a championship decide to pile on a team so they can finally
because
win
they
a
want that
championship.
ring.
There's a whole, yeah. So like before these days of the super teams or everyone piling on one, you're kind of at the whim of where you ended up. So you have a chance at a championship with a team. You'll still be a great player, but it takes a village to win the fucking championship because everyone's a great player in the NBA.
It's the Leicester FC, isn't it? There was a really good quote, and I just love this so much. People thought their ticket to the game made them entitled to do what they wanted, and I've seen that live. I've seen idiots chuck objects at 76-year-old club owners. I've seen people run onto the pitch and disrupt a game because we were losing, and that made the owners spend like, God Christ, I think they made us spend 60 million by them running on the pitch.
Take a look at what happened the Euros final. Do you know what I mean? When everyone rushed into Wembley and were kicking the shit out of each other, and people come into their seats and 15 people have just taken them. Like,
yeah, and it just, oh mate, like I said, you get insane about a sport which is meant to be fun, right? It's.
Yeah. But 2 things. So one thing that I don't think we mentioned, the aftermath of the fight, David Stern immediately enforces a dress code, which is you have to now wear suits to the fucking building. No more of this. Which again is whitewashing of the sport. Like you can't just dress how you're comfortable within your own fucking culture.
Yeah, you haven't got free will anymore.
A thing I find a little bit interesting is basketball is very different to football, where they change the rules very regularly. So, for instance, do you know the key, the part in between underneath the basket, and you stand at the free throw line? Those lines in between there is called the key.
Yeah.
That was invented because that was invented to make the 3-second in a key rule. Because George Mikan back in the day couldn't be stopped underneath the basket. He basically just played like the Indian in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He was just taller than everyone.
Right.
He would just pop it in the basket. So they made that. And then he had Will Chamberlain come along, who was a fucking monster, scored like 100 points a game. He was so good, they made the key wider to get him further away from the basket to make that. And so there's a recent change to the sport is no hand checking. So it's now everyone's getting smaller and smaller skillful players. So it's less catered to big men. Now, the years that the Pistons won it, they won it on hard-nosed defense. So huge guys, kind of static, a lot less moving around, and a lot less fun to watch. So they made the rule of illegal defense, I believe, where you can't be in your own key for 3 seconds, or if you're not moving on defense for 3 seconds, you can't play. It has to be man-to-man. It can't be zonal. They won it with a zonal defense and went, nah, that's too dull. Take that rule away. And all of a sudden, the team you built is no good for the fucking new rule. So that's an interesting thing with it. The shot clock as well used to be 30 seconds. Like, now, let's speed this up. It's 24 now.
But it's no different
they changed the rules like the wind.
But the Premier League changed the rules all the time as well. And it is to make it what they believe is fairer, more interesting, better for the fans. They want to increase the fans' experience. Because that's where the money is. The money sits with the fans.
I know, but the difference with the Premier League is if it wasn't for VAR, like the virtual reality ref, and we had 5 years notice on that before we even fucking tried it, you can't really pick out too many rule changes in the last 15 years. There's one, you can now shoot from kickoff. That's not affecting the game at all.
Yeah.
2 players don't need to be in the semicircle for kickoff. There's like niggly, tiny little rules. There's not like, oh, no more headers. So Lukaku, unlucky, you're worth 10 million because you shit with your feet. Do you know what I mean? That's the level of difference in the NBA as opposed to... they're trying to, but they're saying no more headers at youth level, which then everyone becomes 5'5".
Yeah,
everyone becomes Lionel Messi size, wants to take that away. But yes, that's pretty much. It's a fun documentary. This one. You got anything more on that?
No. Only it was. It was very sad, but it was compelling to watch. I absolutely loved it. I was just, and obviously because we try not to talk about it beforehand, don't we? And I'm like, I just wanted to phone you up and go, oh man, this is fucking great. Which is why we started this podcast, Rick. This is
Making a Murder is why we started this podcast. We're jumping back into that.
But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. To the point I'd probably watch it again. I really would.
It's an easy watch.
It's a lovely little watch.
I'm seeing what else comes out on the Untold series. We'll probably do a couple of those in between.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, for me, this has got 5 written all over it. We haven't had a 5 from me in ages, but I was fired up. I love these basketball players. I love their passion, their honesty. I've got a crush on Reggie Miller. I love Reggie Miller. He's superb. And
Go back and watch some of his highlights. One of the greatest players of all time as well. Like he shot the ball as well as anyone ever has.
Right, okay.
And you know what? He didn't do it fucking underarm either. So
so lit, a 5 from me. What are you giving it, mate?
I'm giving it a good 4. Really
nice. Good. Yeah, great documentary, man. Really. So that's called Malice at the Palace. Check it out. Rick, as always, throwing you under the bus, mate. What's next, boy?
I'm not entirely sure. I'll post it on our social medias, the Instagrams or the Facebook page. But up next, I believe it's episode 2 is coming out tomorrow, available on the Patreon for Making a Murderer.
Oh, and the tension is in. Hang on. The tension is on this one because this was a Rick edit. And as the previous editor.
So if any of our Patreon fans are...
Now, I'd like to publicly say I was incredibly impressed. I think if we listen to your edit of Making a Murderer versus my first ever edit of Grizzly Man.
I hope we get to the point of having fans to do that. Like, look at that. No, I just wasn't vaping back then.
No, I thought you nailed it, man.
Oh, thank you, because there was more tension than in the Pacers locker room at the Palace about setting this online. So if you all want to match friends and you feel like...
Well, and I loved listening to the episode.
If you feel like giving them some notes on what you think we can improve on, don't. All right? I don't need that.
No, mate, seriously, you nailed it. I'm really...
If it's too loud, turn it down. If it's too quiet, turn it up. There we go. Okay. Gonna need some accountability during these rough patches while Matt has a real job. But yeah, the series itself, the Making a Murder series, is fun even to go back through. I'm looking forward to jumping back into that.
Yes, and let's do that this week. So let's do, because we've been saying it for ages now. So just actually listening, because I've listened to 1 and 2, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Yep. I forgot how much fun it was. Yeah. All right. So thanks very much for listening. Big shout out, as always, to our new Patreon fan. Thank you very much, AJ. That was incredibly kind. Please get in touch so we can do some of your Patreon picks. And if you're another one of our Patreon fans, please do the same. Get in touch with some of your more of your picks.
I'm happy picking them. Yeah, no hurry. But we do have we have been given some to do, so it'll be a Patreon pick next, Matt, before you put, this guy picks up later for 25 years and then decides that he wants to become a Chris Packard. So
sweet. Let's get in touch, and thanks very much for downloading. This is one of the best jobs I've ever had, so thanks.
All right, take it easy, guys.
Ta-da.